You know, sometimes I regret having a cat. Boo! 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 This is the story of my life, how I'm going to do something about a cow, and I'm going to take a moment and puff your hair and just blare. Howdy everybody, my name is Alpha Wookie and welcome back to another episode of my Horizon TCG Showcase. Today I'm hoping is going to be a little video, and I'm hoping, am I right ladies and gentlemen? Can I get a, I'm hoping, settle down everybody, whoa! Okay, I don't know if I'm keeping that in. So the basic idea of what this video is going to be about is I'm going to be touching down on a game mechanic that my brother and I have and are changing in the game. I know it doesn't exactly make too much sense to be making videos about when game mechanics change in this game, whereas, you know, you guys don't exactly know what's going on in the game, and quite honestly, I can tell you, we don't exactly know what's going on. We don't... You know what, I'm just gonna film like this. You guys like that? You guys like cards all over the place? You guys like making thumbnails? Hold on, I gotta make a thumbnail. Look at all the cards! I'm gonna be real with you guys, this is my brother's collection, and he had it alphabetized by element and everything. I don't think he's gonna be happy about the next time we go to look at our cards. Maybe if I make a video about it, would you please trade me your Magnetar? I got hungry during filming, so I decided to eat a banana. The contest video is coming up, guys, so be prepared for that. Remember, March 31st. So if you haven't picked up already, and I've made it completely readily obvious that this is going to be a video that is very concise, very to the point, you could leave the video right now. You get what I'm saying. Well, basically, the idea that I'm going to be touching down on today is the turf card. And that's a card that I introduced very early game that my brother and I would thought would be an interesting idea. And it's something that, a concept that I included in the introduction to my card game in general. But the idea of the turf card has drastically changed. At the beginning of at the development, when we were talking about turf cards, is we decided that there were 3 turf card places that could be set. So there was the turf card that would be played on the middle of the battlefield, you know, that would affect wherever all the monsters are fighting, and then a turf card you each could set down for your own kingdom that would affect only you and your monsters, whereas the card in the center would affect all monsters. Eventually we scrapped that idea, and we also scrapped a lot of what the cards did. So turf cards are completely unnecessary, but I wanted to make them interesting enough that you wanted to put them in your deck, or you wanted to play with them, or somebody could make a tactic around them. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you guys the old turf cards that we had, and then I'm going to show you the new turf cards that we have updated with new, a bit more complicated rules on how to play them. So basically the way the old turf cards work is you would put one in play, and at any point, once a turn, you could apply the ability that was on the card. So this Prairie, for instance, and now I don't exactly have the old templates on the computer anymore, so I may not have the ability to put it all up on the screen, so I'm just going to read it off to you guys. So the Prairie, the old Prairie, and by the way, one of the things that we did have the ability to fix about the turf cards was the horrid misspelling of the word turf that I spelled with the letter E for some reason at the beginning of the game here. So the original Prairie's ability was spend 1 mountain energy, and at that cost you could look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose 3, place them in any order at the top of your deck, and place the 2 remaining cards at the bottom of your deck. Now, that's not a bad ability at all. In fact, my brother really liked it. He was surprised at that ability. But what started happening in our game is, you know, every time we played one, I think we literally almost every time we played one said, yeah, I guess I'll set this down, instead of, oh yes, I get to play this turf. And that's what we wanted to do, is we wanted to make the turfs more exciting and far more playable in the way of you were interested in playing them. So this is the Volcanic Mountains that I showed off a while ago. It says every time you put a volcanic activity resource into play, you may choose one of the following. Discard a monster in play, deal 15 damage to a kingdom, or place 5 of any combination of fire and earth coins in combination on any combination of targets. So one of the ones that I haven't shown you guys yet, which, you know, is out the window now, but this is the Arid Desert, and all it did was you spent 1 mountain energy and it allowed your next mountain monster's attack to deal elemental damage, which is, you know, it's okay. And that was the problem. And finally we have the Catacombs, which is a colorless or a non-specific energy, which didn't have, you know, it didn't really have a mountain affiliation. It didn't have an affiliation with any element. So also it doesn't take any specific energy to spend for the ability. So what we have here is it says once per turn you may take a monster from your discard pile and place it in your resources. You may use its natural resource in the way you would use a normal resource. At the beginning of your next turn, you must remove that card from play. It cannot be returned to your discard pile or your deck by any means unless otherwise specified. So those are the 4 turf cards that I'm going to be touching down on today, and I'm going to show you how we change them up. So in conclusion to the old cards, basically they're unnecessary, and we didn't feel excited when playing them. And that's the feel that I want to get. If the cards are going to be unnecessary to begin with, so these didn't apply too much strategy, but the new cards that we have produced, they are loaded with potential for strategy. Basically, my brother and I were talking about, so the way turf cards work is you're playing one, and it completely changes the landscape around you while you're playing. So wouldn't that be volatile? Wouldn't that be dangerous to completely change? Like the Pokemon Stadium match in Super Smash Bros. Every time it changes, the landscape shakes and new things come up. So that's kind of the idea that we had behind this. So we decided, what if there were 3 abilities, or at most 3 abilities? What if there were at most 3 abilities on each turf card? One that occurred when it was put into play, one that occurred every turn while it was in play, and one that occurred when it left play. And so that's exactly what we touched down on. So what these 3 arrows mean is we have the arrival, remaining, and return abilities. So basically, if I were to put the Prairie card in play, the rival ability would activate, and if somebody were to put another turf in play, not only would the returning ability play out, but the arrival of the new turf would play out. So I'm going to explain this a little bit here. So what we've got here is the Prairie, and so when I put this card into play, both players count their cards. The player with the most cards must discard cards until their amount is equal to the amount of cards the other player has. So if I put this into play and I had 0 cards left, my opponent would literally have to discard every card they had. Or if I put it into play and I had 3 cards left, my opponent had 5, they'd have to discard 2. So basically, the idea of the Prairie is everything's level, everything's flat. And so its remaining bonus is when each player goes to draw a card at the beginning of their turn, look at the top 2 cards of your deck instead. Draw one and place the other at the bottom of the deck. That gives you far more options putting this card into play. And once it's taken out of play, the player with the most resource cards in play must discard cards equal to the amount of resource cards they have more than their opponent. So basically what, I didn't word it very well, I'm going to probably reword that, but if I had more resources than my opponent, for every 1 more resource that I had more than my opponent, I would have to discard a card from my hand. So that's the Prairie. It's all about kind of leveling out the playing field a little bit. But if you want to talk leveling the playing field, you want to talk Volcanic Mountains. So first of all, sometimes what will happen is your opponent has almost nothing. I had this happen with my friend Jared. Is he was playing against me. He had 2 resource cards in play while I had 4, and he had the most monsters in play, but I won because he didn't have enough resources to supply his monsters with attacking energy. So I made this card with that game in mind, which its arriving ability says each player discards a renewable or limited resource in play. So both players would have to discard resources, but in return, the remaining bonus that each player gets 2 magma energies, which is just what I call if you have an energy that gives you either fire or earth energy. So, each player is given 2 magma energy every turn that this card is in play. But in penalty, each kingdom takes 10 in damage for every non-natural resource their owner spends. So, if you have a lot more resources to spend, and you have to spend a lot more resources to use your monsters, things like that, you're going to be dealing a lot of damage to your kingdom as it starts to stack up. So even if, so basically, if you put your resources, so you could just completely cut out your resource problem. You could just eliminate, so if you only had 1 resource in play or 2 resources in play, like my friend Jared at the time, he would discard 1, but at the end of the day, he has 2 more renewable energy, and he'd be taking about 30 damage a turn, whereas me at the time, if I had been using everything that had been available to me, I would be taking about 60 damage a turn trying to defeat him before anything. And so the returning ability is each player discards a renewable or limited resource in play and searches their deck for an earth or fire volatile energy. So the basic idea behind that is not only do you discard, you force you and your opponent to discard renewable or limited resources at the beginning, but at the end, each player does it again, and it's replaced by any volatile energy you want. So basically the idea is that the magma spews up as it's coming up, and it destroys your land, but you still have limited resource from there. Anyway, so what I'm going to touch down on next is Arid Desert. Now, Arid Desert, now all of these we have to take into account. They could become extremely unbalanced if we're not careful. But Arid Desert is definitely it is a monster slayer when it comes to fighting water decks. So I'm planning ahead. I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to plan ahead with all the elements, but I think most of the elemental cards that combat each other are going to be created later when the beta elements are complete. But so what we have here is the arrival ability of Arid Desert is each player puts 3 earth coins anywhere in play. So I can put them on my monsters or on your monsters, and you can put your earth coins wherever you like. And so, but the end of the ability says exhaust all water resources in play. So the idea is that the desert dries everything up. This is a very powerful card if you are playing against a water deck. So the remaining ability is that everything takes elemental damage, earth elemental damage. So every turn, everything in play takes earth elemental damage. So, you know, earth elemental damage isn't something you have to worry about unless you have earth coins on you. And the beginning ability is that everybody puts 3 earth coins in play. The returning ability is that each player puts 1 earth coin anywhere in play. And then you discard the monster in play with the most earth coins attached to them. If there is a tie, discard all of those monsters. So the thing with the most earth, it gets dragged down with the Arid Desert. And the idea behind these cards is you can use them for any ability that's on them. You could only be interested in the arrival of the desert. With that fact alone already being stated right now, it's an overpowered card. And my brother and I are going to have to think about how we're careful. So then finally is the Catacomb card, which we basically came to the conclusion that we liked the ability on the original Catacomb card so much that we wanted to employ it in here. So the arriving ability is that both players choose a monster they have in play and they discard that monster. Then the remaining ability is at the beginning of each player's turn, they may remove a monster from their discard pile and place that monster in their resources. Use that monster's natural resource as a volatile resource that turn and remove that card from the game instead of discarding it once you're done. And then the removal ability is deal 40 in damage to the kingdom with the biggest discard pile. So, like I said, these cards could be used for any of the abilities, all of the abilities. You could be interested in just getting it out of there. So if you were just interested in dealing 40 in damage to the kingdom with the highest discard pile, you could put that in play, have a card that destroys turf cards, and then instantly get the removal ability. So that's the fantastic thing about what we've done with the new turf cards, is they have created so much more dangerous strategy that could be employed into the game. We're working on it. We don't know if these cards are going to be too overpowered or if they're just going to fit right at home with the game. Basically, the idea is I'm trying to create turf cards so that there's going to be at least one for everybody. If you've got a strategy in mind, a turf card can help you out. And please ignore the Casey Neistat hands. as always. Thank you guys for watching. There are going to be some fire trip cards coming along. They're going to be pretty sick. And the fire element, by the way, is going fantastically. I've got the templates created on the computer. I just need the arts on them, and I will be making a fire card reveal pretty soon. And speaking of pretty soon, guys, the contest is almost over. I thank you so much for putting in all the effort that you guys have. It's going to be such a close call calling it. I'm going to have a fantastic time making the video. Stay tuned till then, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. And by the way, I'm admitting it now, I can see you.
How do you like it, huh?
Why would you even do this? Does P come before Q? Magmatar.
No.
I'm a cat. Meow, meow, meow.